didn't see them. It's a discipline that is causing problems.
Everybody, put your weapon on safety so that you don't tire your friend.
Say it, everybody.
Yes, sir.
I know you are crying because they kill your regular. That is not the time to cry. Look at me. That is not the time to cry. Good morning, sir. I'm standing here with Sector 2 Commander. The armed helicopter have just come over our head. The instruction I gave them, anything moving, they should engage it because most of my gun trucks are not moving. Like I said earlier, we are with the leading MRAPs and the 3 battalions are fighting and deployed. Nobody is running. But what we have here, I will give you some estimates to guide your good decision, sir. Boko Haram has fired more than 100 mortar bombs at us. They have fired more than 80 to 100 RPGs at us. In addition to more than 8 to 10 gun trucks from every side since yesterday. We have not run, and the soldiers are not misbehaving or disobeying orders. We have casualties. I will come and see you in person on what we need to do, but we are not running. Neither is any soldier misbehaving or running. Sir, if you can look at that, that's one of our MRAP tire that is not run flat, that bullet tore. We have used more than 20 MRAP tires here. That's another one, sir. We have changed close to 250 ELOS tires due to the terrain. This is what we are facing in the Timbuktu Triangle, sir. But we are not running. We are fighting as a system, and we are doing our best to contain the situation and to achieve your mission, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, of course, depending from where you're hearing my voice from. I'm really not too happy anyway to make this audio because, of course, we know what has happened in recent times. Yes, we have seen since last Friday, during the last trial of Mazemon leader Nnamdi Kanu, we have seen how the Nigerian government have continued to frustrate and to, demonize and to wickedly maltreat Simon Ekpa and the rest of his evil Biafran brothers. Because we can't imagine that the whole world came out to say, look, respect this man, respect his fundamental rights as a human being and as a citizen of both Nigeria and England. Respect him because he had been granted, complete freedom by 3 appellate high courts that, they didn't find him guilty of anything. In fact, those high courts had acquitted him. But instead, the government of Nigeria, especially under Justice James Omotosho's Federal High Court, have continued, to insist on trying and continue with this trial and mistrial of Nnamdi Kanu. Yes, presidential candidate of the African, Democratic Party, Sowore, came out and organized a hashtag Free Nnamdi Kanu protest. Now, what did we see as soon as that protest started? A protest that they had a legitimate permission from the police and the authorities to, embark upon. They were vigorously resisted by the Nigerian police that came out firing tear gas and live bullets, and eventually arresting, several people, including the lead counsel of Nnamdi Kanu, lawyer Ejimakor, and Nnamdi Kanu's younger brother, Prince Emmanuel, and a whole lot of other people. In fact, when Nnamdi Kanu's case continued the next day, and Moyole Sowore had to brave it to visit him in the court and encourage him. All we heard, all we saw was that a few minutes after, the exchange between Nnamdi Kanu and Omoyele Sowore, what we saw was a battalion of policemen who came fully dressed as if in war. What was their mission? Their mission was to arrest and detain Omoyele Sowore, under the orders of the uh, Commissioner of Police of the FCT. Of course, Sowore told them, I want to see your search warrants, I want to see your arrest warrants, I want to see that it is my name. But of course, they grabbed him and forced him into a vehicle. It wasn't quite after a long time, probably the next day again, when Omoyele, when well-meaning lawyers fought for his release and the release of our lawyer Ejimakor and other detained free #free Nnamdi Kanu protesters, that we saw another team come this time brutalizing, beating, hurting, assaulting, and and very, very, primitively arresting Omoyele Sowore again, this time saying that he had insulted the IG. He called the IG a nincompoop and a foolish man. Ladies and gentlemen, you can imagine what country we're living in. When we were told that this country was a zoo, a whole lot of people didn't understand what Mazen Nnamdi Kanu meant when he said Nigeria had descended to a zoo. Unfortunately, there's things that have been happening in recent times, recent happenings in Nigeria, especially within the judiciary, especially within the armed forces and the police, show indeed that Nigeria had descended to the zoo point, to a point of animal farm, where it is rat eat rat. That's what it is. That's what it is. Ladies and gentlemen, it's with bitter heart that I want to make this audio today. And this audio is, well, far removed from Mazen Nnamdi Kanu for today, far removed from the shenanigans that Nigerian police had become, far removed from the kind of justice which the judiciary has, begin to, engender and produce within Nigeria. I mean, it is very, very clear indeed that the judiciary in Nigeria has become indeed no longer the final, arbiter for the masses. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to push out a little bit because of something that happened over the weekend. Yes, a lot of you may be aware, some may not be aware, but my audio this morning will bring to our notice what has happened in recent times. And for the purpose of all this audio, ladies and gentlemen, I want to remember our able, indefatigable, highly cerebral, fearless Prime Minister Simon Ekpa. Yes, maybe you think you have forgotten him. No way. Yes, he's been detained in Finland. Yes, an appeal is ongoing for him. Yes, international world is watching. Yes, we are seeing a ray of hope that eventually Finland will speak the truth. Finland will come to its senses. Finland will do the right thing by releasing him, of course, as we are pleading and insisting that the Nigerian government release Mazen Nnamdi Kanu unconditionally. That is the same way we are telling the Finnish people, now reconsider your stand on Simon Ekpa, because of course you are holding an innocent man who was arrested because he dared to speak the truth to authority. He dared to bring up the plight of his people, the Biafrans, to the world, beginning from Lati, Finland. That was his base. Yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to make this audio, yes, in respect of Simon Ekpa. And I'm saying it right here, that respect for Simon Ekpa is the beginning of wisdom for Nigerian generals. Respect for Simon Ekpa is the beginning of wisdom for Nigerian generals. Ladies and gentlemen, may all, go back, follow me back, a few memories backly. Just a few months ago, we all saw how, Nigerian generals were celebrating, especially General Christopher Musa, who was then the chief of uh, defense staff. How they all came up when they heard the ruling that Finland had convicted Simon Ekpa, to 6 years imprisonment. Yes, and they were happy. They were agog, clinking champagne, all of them shouting and screaming, Eureka, Eureka. Finally, we said it. We knew this man would end up this way. We knew Finland would come to our aid. We knew the Nigerian authorities had been trying. Everything they did, everything they said, everything they motivated Finland with have yielded results. In fact, General Christopher Musa came out and was one of the loudest shouters. He came out to say, look, Finland, you have done well. We celebrate your judgment. Yes, Simon Ekpa is a fugitive, a terrorist, and a secessionist. We can't wait to lay our hands on him. Please, please, we are accelerating the process of his extradition to Nigeria. When he finishes his sentence in Finland, when you're done with him, we are going to extradite him here. Bring him here so that we can give him a double measure of what you gave him. By the time we're done with him, he will not be able to spell even his name, Simon Ekpa, anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, the Nigerian authorities, Nigerian leaders were celebrating back to back because Finland, tattooed and danced to the wail of the Jagapan. They brought Simon Ekpa to book. They convicted him despite glaring anomalies in their judgment position, in their submissions, and in their conclusions based on false narratives supplied to them by the Nigerian government. Ladies and gentlemen, we also have, Nigerian foreign authorities, yes, including Yusuf Tuga, the foreign affairs minister, including our own delectable, yeah, Her Excellency Bianco Dumego Ojukwu, how they were hobnobbing with Finnish foreign affairs ministers, all in an attempt, to ensure that Simon Ekpa was convicted. Ladies and gentlemen, we saw it even how the Vice President Shetima, yes, Elijah Shetima, was, all over Alexander Stubb, the President of Finland. How every other day, even at the UN, Special Assembly, 17th Special Assembly, how Elijah Shetima did not allow Alexander Stubb to have, excuse me, a breathing space. It was all over him, insisting that the Jagaban, Emilio, the emperor at Niger, the emperor, the PBAT, had insisted that Alexander Stubb do the right thing. Of course, we saw a lot of visits that were exchanged between Finland authorities and Nigerian authorities. And we know a lot went under the bargain. We know Emilio has a big chest. We know he can stop at nothing to achieve whatever he wanted. Because, of course, we all remember what he did during the elections of February 2023. I mean, a man who said, even before an election was conducted, a man who came out and said, it is my turn, Emilio, nothing can take it from me. A man who told the whole world after an election that was completely ridiculed, an election that the whole world said was not fair, was not free and fair, an election that showed so many glaring anomalies, an election where the results were fabricated, an election where the results were manipulated, an election where other parties' results were suddenly added and cemented with the results of Emiloko and his team. Ladies and gentlemen, you're all living witnesses that all of a sudden an election result that was screaming where the umpire was saying Labour Party, Labour Party, Labour Party, Labour Party, Labour Party. All of a sudden everything changed to APC, 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 APC. So we all knew what happened and what did the Jagaban say. As soon as it was pronounced a winner, as soon as he was pronounced the beneficiary of those anomalies of the February 23 presidential elections, as soon as the mantle of leadership, the certificate of return was given to him, what he told Nigerians was, brace up. I have been made the president. If you don't like it, go to court. Let us meet at the courts. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't like the fact that I, the PBAT, made the Jagaban in Miloko. If you don't like the fact that I'm the president of this country and I've been elected, whether by crook, whether by any other means, either fair or unfair, I don't care what you think. If you think you don't like it, if you think you have grudges with my rise to political power, if you think that election you have anything contrary to say to my success, let's meet in court. Let's meet at the law courts. Excuse me. Ladies and gentlemen, it was obvious from what he was saying, from the threat he was giving, making to Nigerians, that if you don't like me, if you don't want me, if you want to resist the fact that I'm your president, if you want to deny the fact that I'm your president, go to court. Because of course he knows the judiciary was at his behest. The judiciary was under his back and the call. He appointed the judges, he appointed the Supreme Court judges, he appointed chief of generals. He appointed every person who was important in, you know, judiciary, and of course he had been able to make the judiciary an extended arm of the executive arm. We can see how the Senate has been reduced to a rubber stamp. I mean, the Senate that should have been a vigorous challenge to the president, to the executive, the Senate that should have stood out, represented the masses, because of course they have constituents to consider. But instead, we have seen by the appointment of the Senate president and the whole way and manner, the senators are quickly dumping their political parties and jumping into the APC. We have seen that, of course, the executive, the legislator, and the judiciary are no longer separate and watertight different entities. No, they are no longer separate. They are no longer watertight divisions. No, they have become, as far as Nigeria is concerned, the same 10 and 10 under the strict emperorship. Yes, under his emperorship, the Jagaban Emiloko, who of course dictates what happens inside and outside Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring to your notice that all those generals, including the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, and other senior generals who mocked Simon Ekpa, who celebrated his conviction, false conviction, who, of course, threatened that they were going to deal with him as soon as he came out from the 6 years conviction in Finland. They were going to brutally finish up with him. They were going to ask for his extradition. In fact, the process had started, and they were going to deal with him, teach him never again, to point hands at Nigeria, never again to bite more than he can chew. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a sorry one, but it's the truth. All these generals have been disgraced. All these generals have been summarily dismissed from the Nigeria military. I think, I don't know, we're going to get Simon Ekpa to know this, to hear this, so that he too can take a big laugh at them. You don't disrespect Simon Ekpa and you think you're a wise man. Yes, respect for Simon Ekpa is the beginning of wisdom for Nigerian generals. Take it or leave it. In case you didn't know, let me say it the way it is. Let me say it the way it is right now. Yes. The generals, 3 generals that mocked Simon Ekpa have been disgraced out of the military. Yes. The president appointed General Olufemi Oluyede to replace General Christopher Musa as the new Chief of Defense Staff. Ladies and gentlemen, are you aware of that? That someone else, one General Olufemi Oluyede, has been appointed by the president to take over immediately, from the Chief of Defense Staff, former Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa. So it's really not an easy thing. Indeed, it's not easy, but it's the truth. That means, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, with General Christopher Musa, former Chief of Defense Staff, Air Marshal Hassan Abubakar, Vice Admiral Emmanuel Ogala were dismissed overnight. All of them suddenly thrown out without any hesitation, without any fanfare, without any celebrations. They were dismissed immediately, instantaneously from the Nigerian Armed Forces by the Jagaban who initially had appointed them. What a shame! What a shame! And of course, a lot of Nigerians may not be aware. They said there was a coup because there was a coup, and in this coup, it seemed some of them were culpable. Yes, the Nigerian military has denied the coup. Of course, the presidency have denied the coup. A lot of people are saying it is a fake and fabricated news. But the truth of the matter is that a whole lot of people, even within the military, have become tired of the Jagaban and this Emilio controversy. I mean, they are tired of the hashtag impoverishment, hashtag difficult, hashtag, you know, uh, uh, hard time government, a government of pain to Nigerians, a government that has made even having two square meals, even a meal now, very, very, impossible. I mean, this has shown that even the military that have pretended all this while, all these years, have become tired. They have read the handwriting on the wall. What the freedom protesters of Biafra were saying, that Nigerians have been subjected, to all kinds of acrimony, hatred, and difficulties. I mean, as soon as the president came in, the Jagaban came in and said, oil subsidy has been removed. And a whole lot of people thought that was where it was going to end. But ever since then, things have continued from worst to worst, getting more and more difficult. People can barely afford to feed now. People can barely afford to get medicines. People cannot buy cooking gases anymore because the prices keep skyrocketing into the air. A lot of people are unemployed now. A lot of people do not have anywhere with they don't have roofs over their head. People can no longer pay their rents. People can no longer afford children's school fees. It has been suffering upon suffering, what you might call suffering and smiling for, as according to the legend, the Afrobeat legend of the late Femi Anikulapo Kuti, suffering and smiling. Nigerians have been subjected to all kinds of wickedness, terror, terror, suffering, suffering, and difficulties. Ladies and gentlemen, it's very, very unfortunate that General Christopher Musa, former Chief of Defense Staff, have become former. It's unfortunate that despite all he did for the Jagaban, including, of course, disgracing, including making every effort to get Simon Ekpa convicted, including threatening that Simon Ekpa will be extradited, and when he comes here, it will be triple punishment for him. And by the time he's done with Simon Ekpa, of course, Simon Ekpa will not be able to spell his name anymore. How are the mighty fallen and the weapons of death destroyed? Ladies and gentlemen, our Simon Ekpa is having the last laugh. Yes, he has been convicted in Finland, but his appeal is still ongoing, vigorously ongoing. He's being represented by well-meaning international lawyers. We heard our own Dr. Ngozi Arabweze, the Deputy Prime Minister, tell us during our last address that Simon Ekpa's appeal is gaining momentum. And of course, the Finnish authorities have suddenly realized that they are beating more than they could chew, because of course the whole world has found out that Finland was compromised. The whole world has found out that there was more to eat than met the eyes. The whole world has found out all those foreign trips by Finnish authorities down to Abuja under the auspices of Yusuf Tuga, the Foreign Affairs Minister, and of course Bianca Dumegu Ojukwu, the Foreign Affairs Minister for State. All those visits were not for nothing. And of course, it has come to light that Finland was compromised heavily. We don't know what they gave them. We don't know if it was oil wells. We don't know if it was, to come and harvest Nigeria's mineral resources. We don't know what they were given. Was it, duplexes and palatial buildings in choice areas of the world? Was it money? How much were they giving? But of course, it is obvious right now that, of course, Simon Ekpa would have the last laugh, because, of course, it has become obvious that if you don't respect Simon Ekpa, of course, you run into problem. Respect for Simon Ekpa is the beginning of wisdom for Nigerian generals. Yeah, they have been disgraced. They have been thrown out. I mean, those people who thought they would remain here forever, people who thought they would be there to see Simon beg, chains on his hands, shackles on his feet, coming to Nigeria as a prisoner to come and serve another wicked, you know, uh, 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 fake and orchestrated conviction, such that happened in Finland. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you're reading me clear. I don't know if you heard me loud and clear, but these times are good. Times are good indeed, for Biafra. Yes, we know our venerable Mazen Namdekan is sick. We know, of course, that despite his health challenges, Nigerian authorities have been playing a whole lot of, divide and rule with it, playing a lot of games, of course, trying everyhow, to mess up the life of Mazen Namdekan. But of course, we know the whole world is watching the judiciary. The whole world is watching what Nigeria is doing. And people have come, it has come to full glare, full notice of the world. They cannot hide it anymore. That indeed, the Nigerian presidency, the Nigerian Jagaban, the Nigerian authorities have a score to settle Nnamdi Kanu beyond what we are seeing, beyond the mere rhetoric that he was protesting, peacefully protesting about the plight of his Igbo brothers, yes, his fellow Biafrans, beyond the fact that Mazen Nnamdi Kanu said enough is enough. Stop treating these people like unwanted people. Stop treating my people like defeated people. Let them be. And if you don't want them, let them go. In those words, peaceful wars, every essence of what Nnamdi Kanu represents is encapsulated in those peaceful words. I don't know why the Nigerian government continue to parade him, continue to judge him as a terrorist, continue to try him as a terrorist and secessionist, continue, to embarrass him all over the world. While in fact, the Boko Haram terrorists, the Fulani Lakarawas, the Fulani, Hausa Fulani, jihadists that should be judged terrorists, that should be tried as terrorists, are treated kindly and given a soft landing. They call them bandits, mere bandits. And when they are caught, of course, they are rehabilitated, they are brought reintegrated, and they are given stipends. And many of them find their way into the Nigerian military because, of course, now they can use the AK-47, they can assemble bomb-making devices, and of course, they can shoot for the uh, Nigerian government. But of course, we know all that happens. Eventually, when they have taken into the forest, into the trenches, to attack their own, to face their own, these people who say they have recanted, these people who said, no, we are no longer bandits, we are no longer terrorists, they eventually become saboteurs. Because as soon as they meet their people once again, they become even more hardened, even more dangerous, and they commit all kinds of destruction and sabotage to the Nigerian army. That is why at every point in time, the Nigerian army has gone after this so-called Boko Haram and Fulani jihadis. They have been sorry. They have been disappointed because they are routed completely because of insider informations. Yes, because the Fulani jihadist men, the Boko Haram terrorists are reintegrated, rehabilitated, and reintegrated into the Nigerian army, from where they do even more harm. So, ladies and gentlemen, respect for Simon Ekpa is the beginning of wisdom for Nigerian generals. We have seen it. It started with the generals that are losing their jobs, losing their positions. Who knows who is next? Possibly people like Senator Ojo Zokalo, who have continued. People like Senator Ojukalo, who have continued to play double speak every time Nnamdi Kanu's matter is mentioned. People like Professor Charles Soludo of Anambra State. People like David Omahe, works on housing minister. People like Joey Bokwe, who look the other way and begin to disparage the personality of Nnamdi Kanu and Simon Ekpa. Who knows? They will soon make their Waterloo. Soon, very soon, they too will no longer find favor with the Jagapan, and they will be summarily disgraced, summarily relegated to nowhere. Ladies and gentlemen, all those who point one fingers at Nnamdi Kanu, point one finger at Simon Ekpa, accusing them, blaming them, and threatening them, have four fingers pointing back at them. Like the biblical story, we know we belong to Yahweh. The Biafrans belong to Yahweh because we know we serve a living God. They are attacking us from all, they are attacking us, coming for us, but they will flee when Yahweh arises. When Yahweh arises for the Biafrans, for Nnamdi Kanu, for Simon Ekpa, they will flee. Our enemies will flee from 7 different directions. Shame on them. Shame on the generals who mocked Simon Ekpa. Shame on all those high-ranking officers who thought they would have an opportunity to disgrace, to shame, and to suffer Simon Ekpa. They have been relieved of their appointments. They are no longer there. Their services are no longer needed. They have been disgraced. No ceremonies, no final salutes, no march fast. They have been summarily disgraced, and eternally they will know shame, 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 and more shame is their, legacy. Shame. That is it. Respect for Simon Ekpa is the beginning of wisdom for Nigerian generals. Ladies and gentlemen, a word is enough for the wise. All those who think likes Joey Bokwe, who come out and say, look, I don't know why people are protesting for the release of Nnamdi Kanu. Those people, are they thinking? Are they crazy? Don't they know who he represents? He is the worst person that should ever exist in Nigeria. He doesn't deserve any reprieve. In fact, he should die there. Ladies and gentlemen, people like Joey Bokwe, people like Tas Soludo who are chasing political agenda, people like Ojikalo who are chasing political relevance, people like Hope Uzodinma who of course want to remain AGIP, any government in power, and they're selling off their own brethren, their kit and cane, and they are clamoring for the continued detention and disgrace of Nnamdi Kanu or Simon Ekpa. They are clamoring that the Biafrans, their brothers, their brethren should continue to be adjudged as terrorists, as secessionists, as organ harvesters. Ladies and gentlemen, their Waterloo is around. Their disgrace is coming. Very soon, we too will celebrate the disgrace they will get from the hands of of that emperor. Yeah, the same way General Christopher Musa has been relieved. The new General Olufemi Oluyede appointed to replace him immediately. The same way all the service chiefs. Christopher Musa, Chief of Defense Staff, Air Marshal Hassan Abubakar, Vice Admiral Emmanuel Ogala. They have all been dismissed overnight, and shame is now their portion. They have been relieved of all their appointments, relieved of all their positions, relieved of all their medals. Simon Ekpa must hear this. In fact, I will take this message personally to him. Ladies and gentlemen, let's wake up, let's brace up. The fight is not over. Yes, the more difficult it is, the sooner it's getting better. Yes, our two prominent leaders, Simon Ekpa and Onyendo Nnamdi Kanu, are not having it easy. But God is our strength. We serve a living God. Everything shall work out for the best. Thank you and God bless, ladies and gentlemen.